Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second Making Finance Work for Women series in India. My name is Harsha Rodriguez, and I lead client services at Women's World Banking. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers this afternoon and a moderator who promises an excellent discussion amongst the panel. For those of you who may not know us, Women's World Banking is a 43-year-old global nonprofit that has been working to empower low-income women around the world, giving them the financial tools and resources they need to build their security, prosperity, and resilience.
Apologies, I think Harsha is having some technical trouble, and I'll just take over from Harsha. We've been working in India since inception. If you are joining us for the first time, lovely to have you here. For those of you who know us and have been at one of our events or webinars before, we are thrilled you could join us again. Thank you for your continued support. When we convened in India a year ago, the topic we discussed was around empowering low-income women towards greater economic resilience under the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, or the government-sponsored PMJDY program that targeted account opening for the masses. Our focus then was on learnings from urban India. 1 year later, we are delighted to share that we now have new learnings and insights from our work in rural India. But before diving in, let's take a minute to reflect on where the world is today and why women's financial inclusion is more important than ever. Today, every country is battling climate change, the effects of the pandemic, looming recessionary conditions, high inflation, and other global events that continue to push millions into economic strife, impacting economies around the globe. There is a growing agreement by multiple stakeholders of the need to invest in building more resilient and equitable communities and economies. But how can economies grow and prosper if 50% of their populations are excluded? We know that when women have access to income and savings, they invest it in their businesses and their families. A sure way of strengthening economies is by investing in women's financial inclusion and women's economic empowerment. Today's topic is mainstreaming women's financial inclusion, keeping again, with the powerful Jan Dhan program. But this time our focus is on learnings from rural India, where the large majority live. You will hear a number of themes and learnings from our panelists, but I'd like to call out 3 important ones. 1, rural women can overcome barriers they face in accessing and using formal financial services. In our rural pilot, the balance growth of Jan Dhan Plus enrolled women was 4.7 times the balance growth of all women Jan Dhan customers. What led to that? You're going to hear from our panelists. 2, the agent, especially the women agent, plays a critical role in being the banker to the unserved and the underserved communities. Investing in successful and motivated agents resulted in an increase in the cross-sell of products as well as product performance up to 5 times more on certain categories. 3, the pathway to scale, impacting women at scale, is possible through systemic change, through policy shifts and investments by financial service providers. India has made great strides in financial inclusion in the past decade. It has contributed significantly to reducing the global gender gap in financial inclusion. However, while access to banking has improved for women, there still remains a gender gap in usage and engagement, which has to be addressed to have meaningful impact. The speakers today represent positions and organizations that are key in mainstreaming women's financial inclusion. Their rich experiences, deep understanding, and strong perspectives will be valuable to arrive at approaches and strategies to overcome the roadblocks towards building inclusive and resilient economies. I'm looking forward to all your questions and comments in the chat throughout the session. Please do provide feedback. We are happy to take suggestions for future events. In closing, I'd like to say a few thank yous. Women's World Banking is deeply grateful to its funding partners, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Visa Foundation, and Walmart Foundation, for their investment in our work to advance women's financial inclusion in India. We are also grateful for the support from the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation for its early investment of our work in urban areas. We are grateful for the ongoing support of our core funders, DFAT, Australia's Department for Foreign Affairs and Trade, SEDA, the Swedish International Development Agency, and Visa Foundation for enabling our strategy. Thank you. And I'll hand it to hear from here.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Kalpana, and thank you, Harsha, for the opening message. We first start today's discussion with Mr. Amarjeet Sinha. He has been the advisor to the Prime Minister and the Secretary at the Ministry of Rural Development. I'm going to share my screen now for his presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Heer. Thank you very much. Jayshreeben ji, Shobhana ji, Kalpana ji, Heer, Sanjiv, Rajesh, very warm welcome to all of you. And I think I would like to compliment the Women's World Bank for this discussion. What I have before you is a journey undertaken with 84 million women from rural India over the last 7 years. I had the privilege to work with programs which work for women, programs which work for rural development, and programs which work for improved rural connectivity. Friends, it's a journey which is difficult to forget, and it's become a life's passion. It's always been. 38 years of my life I've spent in education, health, and the rural sector, working with people, civil society, and programs and missions of government to understand challenges better. That quest for finding an answer to how are we going to achieve reduction in poverty made us move on the pathway of making finance work for women. Because in an evidence-based study, the change, the transformation happens when finance works for women, when social capital and women's collectives determine the direction in which we move. Friends, the first slide, I'll place before you a few slides. Considering the time, I thought it'll be better that the very first slide, you've seen the collective of women from a tribal pocket in Jharkhand coming together with an identity outside that of the home. No one's sister, no one's mother, no one's daughter, but a woman unto herself. That's what education does, and that's what social collectives do. Friends, the National Rural Livelihood Mission, launched in 2011, had the objective of reaching about 100 million women who may have been deprived or otherwise, who needed to be brought within the fold of the livelihood mission. The Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana National Rural Livelihood Mission, 2014 onwards, has focused on the expansion as well. From 25 million women, we are now a team of 84 million women spread across the country in 7.7 million self-help groups. But what is quite commendable is the fact that the total bank linkage of the last 6 years are more than 5,20,000 crores. And Sanjeev will be pleasantly surprised, but for the COVID, for this period, our non-performing assets have been as low as 2.17%, a little higher now post-COVID. But in states like Bihar and West Bengal, where a fairly large transformation in terms of leveraging credit is concerned, our NPA remains 1.7. I'll explain why that is the case. Today, 93,959 Gram Panchayats have the banking correspondent Sakhis from the Livelihood Mission. We are very happy to combine with the banking system to provide a BC in all the 250,000 Gram Panchayats of this country, because we realized the earlier model, which the commercial model that banks had worked out, the specific geographies which was destined for particular banks to work in, we've struggled to get all that out of the way in order to reach the women whom we wish to reach. We don't only have banking correspondents, we also have 43,998 bank Sakhis. These are women from Livelihood Mission who actually assists the bank to get the loans approved. We do not approve a single loan in this mission without a microcredit plan. The microcredit plan is a necessary need. We've learned from the works of Jayshreeben and many others how these have worked successfully. Among the various successful models, we today have more than 24,520 women's collectives which offer agriculture services to the farmers, from power tillers to pump sets to soil testing, and they earn a living by providing these on rent. We have more than 600 products on Amazon and almost 1,080 on the GEM portal. I'll not be surprised if over the next 365 days, these numbers may well cross a lakh at the rate at which they are all getting formalized as they leverage working capital. The size, the scale jumps exponentially. And I think this is one critical gap which I'll address as I move on. Friends, we also thought that the world thinks the women don't work on agriculture. They do. And for that reason, we have 1.7 million women farmers working with us on sustainable agriculture. More importantly, the lesson we learned from Tamil Nadu and the other southern Indian states, very often we say that poverty levels are low in southern India. Our studies have indicated that 6 factors made for that difference in southern India: high adolescent girls' participation in higher secondary and higher education, decline in fertility, formation of women self-help groups, livelihood diversification through skills, and that far-reaching decision of Dr. C. Rangarajan as the Reserve Bank of India governor 29 years ago, bank linkage for SEWAs. Friends, over the last 6 years, what has happened is that what happened in southern India has happened over most parts of India extensively during this period, as some of the numbers will indicate. 2 major studies on the livelihood mission by Anjani Kochar and the team from Stanford University, as also the P.K. Singh study of IRMA. Both of them have confirmed the gains made and the expansion to new geographies. Next one. Friends, very quickly, we had a framework which was an enabling environment for livelihood services. We've tried to provide dedicated support institutions, human and social capital, creating an institutional platforms of the poor, the cluster level federations, the district federations, and so on. I'll explain them as I move on. This improves production, productivity, market linkages, access to entitlements, and last minute delivery of public services. Next one, please. Friends, in this whole journey, decentralization as visualized by Mahatma Gandhi, the greater the power of the panchayats, the better for the people. The ideal solution has been provided to us by women. We have now tried, and successfully in many parts of the country, the elected panchayat leaders were exercising monopolistic authority and often arbitrary authority in many cases. The rise of community organizations creates that countervailing organization which challenges arbitrary exercise of authority. Any monopoly is bad, and therefore, even in Kerala, when we celebrate local governments, we often forget the accountability to local communities through the neighborhood groups, Kudumsri, and so on. That's the model we are pursuing nationally. In my own home state of Bihar, one thing we are very proud of saying is that Jivika covers every village in Bihar. SEWAs are in every village. Not only that, if any service is not good, PDS is not working, go to a village. The only demand of the villagers, Jivika Didi ko de dijiye, theek ho jayega. Give it to these women and it will be all right. Next, please. Friends, decentralization is the message. Like many other savings programs, we too began only in the Panch Sutra manner: regular meeting, regular saving, regular internal lending, repayment regular, updated books of account, and full stop. And perhaps some extra saving available 24/7 for emergencies. Next. But then we very quickly moved on to the self-help group. Next slide. And the partnership with the Gram Panchayat to what we call Dash Sutri. We learned it from Maharashtra. The state rural livelihood in Maharashtra tried this. In all their systems of monitoring, reporting in the women's group, they look at health, hygiene, sanitation. They look at education. Next. Next slide, please. They look at active participation of SHGs in the Panchayati Raj institutions. There was a time when everybody thought livelihood mission must be purist. Keep it away from panchayats, keep it away from people, keep it away from convergence. Otherwise, they'll get polluted. The quality and idealism will get polluted. But if you do not remove the inertia of the mainstream, what good is a project or a new idea? It is the inertia of the mainstream that has to be challenged. Next, please. Access to entitlement. Next. So it was not just savings. We went to a larger frame of lives and livelihoods. Next one. And in that process, just one example, many of you would be aware in 2018, Honorable Prime Minister wanted us to reach the 7 services listed on the right: the gas connection, electricity connection, LED bulbs, bank Jandhan accounts, accident insurance, life insurance, and Mission Indradhanush immunization. Sanjiv would be aware, on a period of 3 months, purposively selected 63,974 villages where these vulnerable social groups were more than 50% of the population, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in large villages, 1,000 in the plain areas and 500 in the northeast and the Himalayan areas. We had to provide these 7 services to all. The women SHG made the difference, because they could hold everybody accountable at the local level, along with panchayat leaders and the frontline workers. Friends, the lesson from this is very clear. The community connect and the social capital is the way forward. And this is what builds the platform for financing. Next one, please. Next one. So how do we identify whether or not we are reaching the poorest? 2015 July, we published the socio-economic census, which provided us data village-wise, habitation-wise, household-wise. Which are these households which are deprived? Who are these women in our program? In 2014, the Livelihood Mission sought a cabinet approval that will not consider a village saturated till every deprived woman is covered. The disaggregated data available gives you an opportunity for many experiments. The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, the Ujjwala Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana for secondary, tertiary, they were all built on this, the common database of the deprived households. About 88 million were identified. And these 88 million had the benefit of all these programs, what we now call as the pro-poor public welfare, or the beneficiary class. It is these households, and mind you, these list is the same as taken from the census. The households have been picked out from there. As a consequence, no one really gets left out unless and until some households or some villages were not covered in the census itself. Next one, please. Now, the impact of the Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, again, these are all independent assessments and evaluation. Why it's important is because bank accounts, it is not that only government claims to have opened bank accounts. There is validation of that in independent data. And in many states, again, I go back among all the states to my own home state, where from 26% women, NFHS 5 says 77% women now have a bank account. Next one. Clearly, the bankers deserve to be congratulated for this outstanding work. Likewise, the gas connections. Look at the jump. The orange line indicates NFHS 4 2015-16, and the blue bars are the 2019 to 21. Next one. Our contention is, if I want to increase economic activity, I'll have to take care of the asset deficits of the poor. These were the asset deficits: housing, electricity connection, gas connection, roads, improved sanitation facility. Clearly, still some way from 100%, but almost close to that. Nothing short of remarkable, from 32% to 80, 75, 80%. Next. Immunization, similarly, the jump. On housing, for example, look at rural housing. The unmet need or the housing shortage is down from 29% to 13%, validating each and every house constructed. A Pakka house, 2/3 of them, till 22, as I speak to you, we have completed 27.5 million homes in rural India, and 2/3 of them have women as owners. either solely the woman or woman and man together. That too makes for a difference. Add to that the Swamitva revenue card, women's borrowing limits will increase further. Next, please. Next. Likewise, decline on poverty. I'll not get into this next. But these I am putting in place because everything is related to each other. Next. The road network, electricity, next. Now, this is an important slide. Friends, I shared with you what happened in the 5 southern Indian states and why poverty declined. There is confirmation of it from the data available from the banking sites. In 2012-13, 84% of our lending was in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala. 84%. 2013-14, it didn't come down. It went to 85.6. Today, perhaps it accounts for not more than 43 or 44%. Not because it has not increased there, but because other states have stepped in. This is the scenario in 12-13 and 13-14. Banks still reluctant initially in some of the backward districts. They have not seen what these groups are capable of. Next one, please. Next, please. The credit linkage in 2018, you look at the green areas in southern India, but you look at also the green areas emerging in Bihar, Odisha, Jharkhand area. Rest of it still had long way to go. But loans per SHG were still much higher in the southern Indian states. The next one, please. This is 2018. But when you come to 2022, the credit growth profile, the gains are in the poorer states, unlike profile of growth, which you see otherwise. Developed areas develop more. Just today in the Business Standard, you reported about how Delhi, Bombay, Telangana, Gujarat, and Hyderabad account for most of the employment created over the last 6-8 months, additional employment created. Here is a program where credit is going to the poorest regions. Because all the other benefits that I mentioned to you, the moment you had deprivation as a criteria, more houses got constructed in the backward areas, more Ujjwala gases got distributed to the poorest of the poor, asset base of the poor, because of the Prime Minister's program of pro-poor public welfare, ease of living. Once that happens, some education is there, the demand for loans and credit increases manifold. Assam, there's a growth of more than 1,000%, 17-18 to 2022. Bihar, 117%. But Tamil Nadu, it is only 65%. In absolute terms, Telangana and West Bengal, which were far away from each other to 12-13, are almost at a similar level, 13,000 crores of leveraging of this SHG loans. Next one, please. Next one. If I look at the support to banks, Sanjiv would be aware, we've had a very interactive approach with the banks, whether it is monitoring bank linkage with data from the CBS or bank sakhis at bank branches or training of bankers. But most importantly, what has happened in Bihar and West Bengal in particular is on account of what we call the community-based recovery mechanism, CBRM. Each and every rural bank branch has the CBRM in Bihar and Bengal, whose job, the group of women come to the bank, the manager tells them which are the loans which are getting outstanding, the women get them paid. They come with the microcredit plans and tell the bank manager, we've done the detailed assessment of assets available, possibilities of what businesses, what scale, how much money, and this is how the partnership works. And therefore, when Community Connect is strong, your NPAs are 1.7% in spite of manifold growth, 2, 3 times, 4 times growth during this period. Next one, please. Friends, in this journey, digital finance has played its role, and we have tried our best to support it as much as we can to a less cash ecosystem. There were challenges. Many of you are aware. SHG accounts are managed by 2 signatures. Initially, the digital authentication was available only for a single person. So a lot of the SHG transactions had to be in cash at the village level simply because dual authentication was not possible there. It began with an experiment with one of the banks, and today I'm happy to say that DFS, all the banks cooperated, and everybody is doing dual authentication for SHGs also at the village level. Next one, please. Next one, please. Similarly, the banks, the previous one, the bank Sakhis. This is a picture which, financial inclusion, if you ask me, this visual is what it is about. Look at this 90-year-old old woman being paid her pension literally on her deathbed. This is what technology affords. This is what technology has made possible. But technology is a means, not an end in itself. If we didn't have the foot soldiers, we would not have been able to do it. We pay the bank Sakhis about 4,000 or 5,000 rupees. Rest of it she earns through the commission, the 1% commission which is available. So even in very difficult remote areas, they're willing to work. Next one, please. Next one. Friends, these are diversity of possibilities. And when incomes rise in these households, one major reason for it has been animal resources goes up substantially and significantly because some support is available. Next one, please. Where is the money invested? This is 2018, and we already see consumption becoming smaller and smaller, 21%. Livelihoods, education, health, and housing taking over. Each year, this profile in the more mature states is moving away from, of course, COVID has been a setback in many states, but overall, from consumption to economic activity. And this is where a microfinance loan is not an economic activity loan, it is a consumption loan. Because if that money reaches at 26% or 24%, how do I compete with somebody who borrows at 7% or 11%? So clearly, that's the operational issue with banks we often raise. Your portfolio of direct lending to SHGs and cluster federation should be more than what you lend to MFIs. Because this is the route which will give us economic activity. Consumption loans, let the MFIs do. Next one, please. Well, a lot of the hand-holding, the para workers that I mentioned to you, we call them the community resource persons. Now, this mission did not get consultants from all over the world to tell us what to do. It is these women who got out of poverty. Somebody is a Pashu Sakhi, somebody is a community mobilizer, somebody is a Krishi Sakhi, somebody is a bank Sakhi. From among them, and this is the kind of hand-holding which ensures that things move. Next one, please. Next. And the results show, both in the study by the Stanford University as also the IRMA, Stanford University has rightly pointed out, because we are trying to cover the poorest of the poor. When we do that, the economic gains take a little while. The asset deficit removal, which was part of the ease of living, pro-poor public welfare, has helped. But education challenges, skilling challenges, we have some challenges, nutrition challenges. Next one, please. Next one, please. Yeah. So there can be many factors. I have explained most of them, so I'll not take time on this. But the next slide, which is the last one, these slides can be given to anybody who is keen to see. No, just one before this. One before this. Yeah. The challenges. Now, if I look at the challenges, and this is where banks, RBI, everybody has to kind of still do some more work. We are trying our best. SHG monies go to the SHG account. We did not have the mapping of SHG to the individual women's account who was being lent. Banks and we have all worked together at the cutting edge level to improve this, because that improves the CIBIL rating. The credit history improves. So this becomes very, very critical for us, mapping of this so that we are able to improve the credit rating of the women. The second is the issue of formalization with MSME registration, PAN and Aadhaar, because as I said, for nano enterprises to become micro enterprises, the real challenge is working capital, scale, size. Many states like UP have linked it up with a one district, one product. I hope more of those happen. We linked up, we tried our level best to go to every ministry. Look, we have social capital. Will you engage us in your work? Food processing has engaged SHGs in their work. Agriculture and formation of the farmer producer organizations has given support for 150 of our farmer producer companies which we've set up. So clearly these partnerships have begun, but a long way to go. And this is what, let's make use of the social capital for something more creative, more worthy and stronger economic activity. The housing pattas, because of the Swamitva program, which we've carried out with drones in more than 1 lakh villages, people in the rural areas, your agricultural land cannot be mortgaged and your housing patta was not available to you. As a consequence, you couldn't borrow. For Bank of Baroda and other banks, it will open a new lending fora now that that is available, started already. And that too will help because collaterals are possible now because those properties will have papers against which they can borrow. They didn't have papers earlier. Professionals needed for scale and size. A lesson we learned in supporting producer companies for dairy milk through the NDDB services in the backward areas of Madhya Pradesh and Bihar. We said we give no subsidy under the livelihood mission, but we can experiment in giving you professionals. The condition is we'll pay the salaries of the professional managers for 3 to 5 years from the livelihood mission. Thereafter, the manager has to ensure that the producer's company's work is large enough to be able to achieve scale and earn their salaries. Happy to report that all these producer companies don't want any of our money now. We're getting the professionals for scale and size to convert nano to micro. Marketing linkages and value chain development, still a lot more work to do. Even though the e-platform is available, we have to invest in processing and many other processes. Lending to SEWA, cluster level federations and joint liability groups. As I said, better than lending to MFIs for economic activity. This is a principle we've been working with banks on a large scale, but this is something which needs to be done. In case this were not possible, we have to look at the Andhra model of the Stree Nidhi, which is registered under the Cooperative Act, but which is an on-lending institution. Every commercial bank trusts Stree Nidhi to be able to do on-lending for them. They borrow at 11% from the bank and give to the women at 13%. And the recoveries are more than 99.9%. Clearly, the community connect is there, but there's an on-lending institution in between. In the case of Orissa, the State Rural Livelihood Mission is itself working like the on-lending institution. State Bank of India has a partnership. But this is another area where we need to do more work. We don't need a separate bank, but we need a facility which is able to guarantee monies can move quickly, which is able to ensure that needs are met in time, and which allows us the possibilities of complete credit histories to be able to move much faster. Here is a force of 84 million women who've got all the assets, because in every program, we've insisted on convergence. If you are doing a farm pond under MGNREGS, the women in the livelihood mission gets it first. If we are providing an animal shed, it goes to the women. The Sikkim state, which is now the organic state, of all the things they've used MGNREGS to provide a dairy shed to every farmer in Sikkim. And the result of it is, with clean water, of course, which is again the spring shed development, which is done under the MGNREGS, the plantations, a lot of the plantations that they've taken up, all these put together have created the organic world for us in Sikkim. The potential is manifold. 5,20,000 crores is the beginning. If you ask me, my own home state, which has reached 7,000 crores from barely 70 crores 10 years ago, the capability is to go to 70,000 crores. Housing, so many sectors, they need money. For commercial banks, if you ask me, they have more business to do in rural India with these women than there is business to do with business actually. Because these are not been banked to the extent they ought to have been. And if you can actually build these bridges, a multiple and very safe lending of multiple times is possible. These are all bankable projects because here is a community of people deprived of access to credit. If you can provide it with due process, that is what, in terms of assessing what needs to be done. Friends, the last slide, which is always, each time that we at end of the day, we are very tired. And when you reach one of these sites, it makes us alive again. When you find these women with confidence running the support system for agriculture in rural India, when you find a little bank Sakhi providing money, updating her passbook, checking what money she has, but more importantly, you find this auto being driven by a woman. Under the PMGSY, we did about 160,000 kilometers of roads in the last 4 or 5 years. We found that in many areas where we did roads, especially in Naxalite affected areas, These roads were ready, but nobody was willing to run public transport because these are disturbed areas. Who came forward? We asked our women, we'll give you an interest-free loan. आपसे तो किसी की दुश्मनी नहीं, आप चलाइएगा तो कोई रोकेगा नहीं. बोले हाँ साहब. We teamed up with the transport department that look, we will give them the loans from the community investment fund and other funds. Let them run the public transport for getting vegetables and produce to the markets and for getting people to and from the markets without any permit or license. We have more than 2,165 such vehicles. This number also, I am confident, wait another year or so, this will not be less than 30 to 40,000. There's a demand for it. They have demonstrated that they can run transport vehicles as well. The opportunity is what is needed. The chance is what is needed. And some of those bottlenecks, many of them, DFS, the banks, everybody cooperates. But to look at them as the possible and potential, the growth that we are looking for will come from this. Because somewhere or the other, we always find large and larger projects better for investments, but the returns here may well be much better than that. Friends, I stop here. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Sorry for extending the time. It's a passion. It's a lifetime's passion to do something different on social development, education, health, livelihoods, and little bits of support and success that we get. It changes, transforms the lives of these women for all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. I'll just get out of the presentation. Stop sharing. You make us very hopeful, Mr. Sinha, with your views, your insights, and for showing us what can be done, what still needs to be done. Thank you for your insights. To the participants here, we'll be able to share the presentation with you, over email after the event. Thank you very much, Mr. Sinha, once again. I'm delighted today to, introduce the panel that will focus on mainstreaming women's financial inclusion, the multiple approaches that are possible, and the challenges forward. I would like to introduce, first of all, Ms. Subramanian. She is the Deputy Managing Editor at the Financial Express, the business newspaper of the Express Group, where she's been responsible for ideating and producing the paper. And she comes with over 25 years in business journalism. And she's extensively written on banking, fintech, the economy, and other corporate issues. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Mr. Sanjiv Chadha, the Managing Director and CEO of the Bank of Baroda. He definitely has over 35 years of experience in banking and financial services. An alumnus of the St. Stephen's College in Delhi, Mr. Chadha started his career with SBI in '87, where he spent 33 years and landed diverse roles. He's also on the board of the National Insurance Company Limited and the National Institute of Banking Management. Our next panelist is Mr. Rajesh Bansal. He's the CEO of the Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. He brings, again, almost 3 decades of global experience in digital financial services and has been a key architect of India's journey towards a cash-light economy. He was a member of the founding team of Aadhaar and led the design of direct benefit transfer model. He's also one of India's top 30 influencers in fintech as of 2022. We're also joined by Jayshreeben, lovingly called Jayshreeben Vyas, who's the Managing Director of Shri Mahila Seva Sehkari Bank since 1986. She's been instrumental in introducing and operationalizing an integrated micro insurance scheme for women working in the informal sector, also coming up with the first financial literacy program and for Seva Bank members. And she's held various positions such as the Managing Trustee of the Indian School of Microfinance, the Trustee and Chair of Mahila Housing Trust. She's also the Director of Equitas and Friends of Women's World Banking. We also have Kalpana, who you heard some time back. She's the Regional Head of South Asia for Women's World Banking in India and the region. She comes with over 25 years of experience in financial services, in retail banking and insurance.
Thank you, Heer. It's lovely to be here this afternoon. And that was a very, very informative and very heartwarming address. I mean, it was lovely to hear the wonderful stories. So now we'll go right across to the panelists. They're all there on the ground and they've done tremendous work, and we should be able to get a very good sense of how things are progressing on the ground. So, Mr. Chadha, if I could call upon you first to sort of kick off the discussions. This is very, very close to BOB's heart, we know, and your bank has done a lot of good work. So do share all your latest experiences with us, Mr. Chadha.
So thank you very much, Shobhana, and I think all of us, it was really such a pleasure to hear Mr. Sinha. I think the kind of passion that he has brought to the job, I think, to my mind, that is really the first prerequisite if we have to make things work. And really, it's very so good to hear what's happened. So I think from the perspective of Bank of Baroda, the financial inclusion piece has really been one area which gives us a lot of satisfaction in terms of the progress that we have made, and also I think the potential it has to actually add so much value for the bank and to our constituents as we go forward. Just to put matters in perspective, the bank has about a 6% market share in India. But when it comes to Jan Dhan accounts, it's about 17%. I think of all banks in India, this is the most disproportionate contribution that any bank makes to financial inclusion. And even as we speak, I think every day, the bank actually is adding more and more Jan Dhan accounts. Now, having these accounts, I think, is, of course, the first stage. It was the first prerequisite in terms of trying to see how do we actually have the base of customers with whom we can engage to make sure that financial inclusion is not only confined to opening an account, but also to see how it can be a multifarious, deep financial engagement. For that, again, what I experienced has been that having accounts was something which is accomplished largely through our branch network. But when it comes to engagement, our branch network is unfortunately grossly inadequate to really measure up to that challenge. Our branches are too few in terms of how they are organized, how they are staffed. They are not the model instruments of engaging with our Jan Dhan account customers. And that is where, again, the BCs actually become really the centerpiece and the fundamental building block if we have to take financial inclusion beyond just opening accounts to a much deeper engagement. For us, the biggest lesson was really when the pandemic came along and when the government tasked us to make sure that the monies it wanted to transfer to beneficiaries, it should be done in the shortest period of time and most effectively. And what we found then was that while our branches, it was a challenge to open them. And then after you open them, the fact is they work during predetermined hours. But when it came to our BCs, they would be open at 6 o'clock in the morning. And they were the most effective instruments of making sure that whatever the government wanted to do in terms of reaching out to millions and millions of people, they were the most effective instruments to do that. So therefore, again, the realization came to us also that if we have to make sure that this engagement has to deepen, the number of our BCs has to be much larger as compared to what it was. So in 2019, the number of BCs that we had was about 17,000. The branches of the amalgamated bank, Bank of Baroda, Dena Bank, and Vijaya Bank was about 9,000. The proportion was less than 2:1. As we speak today, it is already more than 4:1. The number of BCs has actually doubled from under 18,000 to about 38,000 today. And as we move forward, we believe by the end of the year, the proportion will be something like 5:1. And increasingly, every transaction that can be done through a BC is being pushed to a BC. This is something which is in the enlightened self-interest of banks also, because the transaction cost in a branch is a multiple as compared to what it is in a BC. The BC model is scalable, it is flexible. And at a time when the world is changing, any model which will survive has to be scalable and flexible. Unfortunately, the branch model is not. Therefore, the way we see things, the BC piece is going to become, very frankly, the centerpiece of the bank when it comes to financial outreach. Now, having BCs is one thing, but then again, how do you make sure that customers are comfortable with the business correspondence? And that's where, again, our collaborations with Women's World Banking has come in. To try to see, again, how our own products, our own services, our formats are of kind where again, which are conducive to women customers, women Jan-Dhan account holders to come and interact with them. As we speak today, more than 50% of our Jan-Dhan accounts are women customers. And there is no way that we can talk about financial inclusion, financial engagement, unless we actually are, in terms of gender, active in making sure that our formats meet their requirements. So we started off with some metro areas in terms of working with Women's World Banking, and then we extended it to see whether it could work better in a rural context, which again is, I think, the theme of today's conference. And so Shahjahanpur and UP was identified as the district where we would work first. Based upon the success of that model, we have taken it to our mirrored zone, which covers the entire Western UP. And as we find the right model, I think we will have an occasion to see how we can take it to the entire country. So to my mind, 2 or 3 stages for us in terms of how we move forward. One, of course, was to open the accounts. That in so many ways was easier because there was a definite number that you had to achieve. The second part was to actually have a network which corresponds to the requirements of these accounts, which was a BC network. And third is to now find the ways and means, the processes, the products which are more inclusive, more gender directed, not gender neutral, because I think being gender neutral is not going to be good enough. I think these are stages that we have gone through. So far, the success, I think, has been very heartening for us. Every year, the number of accounts which are inactive, zero balance has been coming down. The balances have been going up, and to such an extent that quite probably today, even on a standalone basis, the financial inclusion effort of the bank is also commercially sustainable.
That's wonderful to hear. I mean, you've sort of come up with a win-win proposition, where for the banks also it works better to use the BCs, like you pointed out, the cost is lower. And then obviously for the women, they become resilient financially. That's really wonderful. And, taking it to 38,000, congratulations. That's great work from Bank of Baroda. Kalpana, if you could now just talk a little bit about how, we can enthuse others, to sort of take this initiative forward. How do you push people, in the maybe government, regulatory authorities, and, the other stakeholders to sort of, so that we can achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves.
Thank you, Shobhana. And thanks, Mr. Sinha, for the, I would think it was a masterclass on financial inclusion, really. Thank you so much. Really, our progress in the country and Jan-Dhan Plus is the product that we had done would not have been possible without our able partners in Bank of Baroda. And thank you, Mr. Chadha, for supporting us through and through. As Mr. Chadha mentioned earlier, there were 2 distinct phases. There was an urban pilot and rural pilot. The first premise was, does it make business sense for the public sector bank? And, because they are active savers, of course, we all know this. And once they become engaged, the women are also very loyal customers. And so we tested with what was called a Choti Bachat, the small savings product. So these were the learnings for us from the urban pilot. It's not just important, as Mrs. Chadha mentioned. Women-centered product design means ensuring that the product is more welcoming for the women, which encourages them to save and rewards them. If these components are not built into the solution, then it just remains in paper, and it just becomes very difficult to kind of engage the women. And of course, like Mr. Chadha mentioned, the importance of the BC channel in delivering it. We realized that when we started working with women BC correspondents, we found a take-up increase of almost 32%. Started depositing into the small savings account in our first pilot. But the problem was that the BCs were used mainly for withdrawal and depositing services, and they really were not cross-selling the more relevant, we felt, the resilience products as that provides resilience, like the social security programs were not being talked about. Only 10 to 15% of the VCs at that point in the urban centers were actually talking to the customers about these products. Our learnings from our rural and peri-urban pilot, when we moved out to the overall mirrored zone, we came out with solutions. We actually, worked on the solutions, making it more relevant for the rural customers. And we had 3 or 4 key learnings. First one, unlike a urban situation, in the case of a rural situation, a community-based awareness camp, was very viable, because at the end of the day, you could come up with solutions, but it's got to be viable. And second, at the ground level, you need to provide them with the kits, etc., that makes it easy for the BCs to actually roll it out. I mean, you could have the best solution, but you make it more complicated, then it just makes it very difficult. It should be economically viable for the banks. At the same time, it should be technically feasible for the BCs to actually roll it out. And so we tested over 700 camps in about 5 months, and we could really see the improvement in the engagement, because it's no longer about access; it's about usage, isn't it? I mean, we all understand this, and so 52% of people who attend, and the point is, to make it interesting, memorable, they don't attend a camp and forget it. We did a test after a month, and we figured that 52% of people actually recalled, and they could understand what the camp was all about. It was about Choti Bachat. It was about 500 rupees 5 times, etc. They could actually recall. And of course, in terms of what we mentioned as the problem area in the first one, which was about the building the capabilities of the BCs. Here, how to make them good relationship managers, so that they become really the mini branch, was something that we worked on. And we helped them with a lot of material, which was relevant to these, marketing, communication, contextualization from a rural point of view. So we used things like snakes and ladders, like a mud pot. I mean, whatever is relevant for a woman, because nobody was speaking to the woman in the language that she understood, like Mr. Chadha was saying earlier as well, right? So how to come out with material that resonates with this audience, how to make it more acceptable to the, to the woman customer. That actually led, within that period of a small period, it actually, in the rural pilot, it actually led to about 47,000 customers being enrolled. More importantly, it was about the sticky mark. At the end of the day, for it to make business sense for the banks, it's not about the money just coming in and going out, because women were only seeing the savings bank account as accounts through which they were getting the DBTs. But how to make them see it as a full-fledged savings bank account. So the stickiness was something that we were also testing, and we're very happy to see that the average balances grew literally double, from about 4,700 to about 8,300 or so. So about 2,500 rupees was actually, there was there's a huge jump in the savings in just 5 months. And of course, along with all of this, the point that Mr. Sinha made, which is, and BOB very strategically co-opted the women BCs in Uttar Pradesh, the BC Sakhis in Uttar Pradesh. They co-opted them to improve the reach. And, that was win-win for the BC Sakhi as well as for the bank. And so we realized that the challenges for a BC Sakhi was far more nuanced as compared to a banking correspondent, where there were, there was a lot more ownership within the bank. And so we worked with close to about 200 BC Sakhis, and now we have actually rolled it out to about 2,000 BC Sakhis. But the learning was that, they were first-time entrepreneurs in a lot of cases. So we really had to do a whole bunch of hand-holding, mentoring, develop programs on how to be professional, etc., to overcome a lot of mental barriers. Because, it's a lot more, like Mr. Sinha mentioned, these were, had distinct identities, how to create and how to be comfortable with that distinct identity in stepping out and earning an income, etc. So we, worked quite a bit on that piece as well. And that resulted in fairly substantial result. I mean, a BC Sakhi was just grabbed onto this program, and the productivity increases of the BC Sakhi was was remarkable, compared to even the regular BCs. These have really been our work with the banks, Shobhana. But We've also expanded our work with, say, with Maharashtra SRLM, for instance. The same BC Sakhi learning could be then, work with the Maharashtra SRLM BC Sakhis, could be, provide them with a relevant digital and financial capability. Again, digital becomes so critical, and Mr. Bansal is here as well. And, we worked with him, in the Swanari program that, they had rolled out earlier. And, that then just becomes so critical, how to make these women more comfortable with, the digital technology. And of course, hand in hand, the whole consumer protection, because with the technology, that whole piece around consumer protection also then becomes crucial. So these are the ways in which we actually worked with multiple partners to really, improve the financial inclusion, and really that's the starting point, as, we all agree. It's a financial empowerment, that we're all aiming for. So that's the work that we've been doing with public sector banks, like with BOB. Recently, we started work with Indian Bank and the Union Bank of India as well.
That is a lot of work, and I mean, it's really, meaningful work. It's really very, it's very, very encouraging. Mr. Bansal, if I could bring you in, since, you are the innovation hub and you are trying to come up with good ideas, etc. And Swanari, I think, has been a very good success so far. If you could, tell us about your learnings, and, if you could just suggest, how we could take this forward and scale this whole initiative, meaningfully.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thanks to Mr. Sinha and Mr. Chadha for giving us so much information, some of which obviously I knew but did not know in such detail. So, just for the audience, we are Reserve Bank Innovation Hub, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Reserve Bank of India, set up last year. And our mission is frictionless finance for 1 billion people. And hence, women hold very close this thing to our mission, because studies by entities like WWB and others have shown us that access to finance for women is a challenge. With the PMJDY, some things have been solved, as Mr. Chadha said. With Aadhaar, a lot has been solved, at least on the identity and KYC part is concerned. But access usage is still an issue, and not just credit, but other financial products. Maybe I'll talk a bit about Sonari and tell you largely what is our larger agenda as far as women is concerned.
Yeah, that would be
nice. Sonari, so I thought, okay, how do we start this? We thought, let's pilot it, I would say, with Sonari, because it worked on 2 hypotheses. First is identify solutions which are made for women consumers. That's one. Secondly, our hypothesis is that women know women's financial needs better. Period. I've been trying to ask a lot of people, please tell me if this hypothesis is wrong or right. I would really urge all of you post this to help us think through this hypothesis, because I'm just going by, my childhood days and my mom guiding the neighbor better than I would do or my dad would do. And I think in our social context, that is what is true. So we are, as Sonari, we wanted to build financial solutions for women. The other thing we want to do is we want to create more and more fintech entrepreneurs in India who can solve for women. So hence the hypothesis that women can build better for women. And the typical persona that I talk about is, if there is a girl in Chhattisgarh or in Bihar who's studying in engineering, has a great idea. She will talk to her friends about, what, mom has a savings problem, wish we could do this, wish we could do that. Eventually what happens? After a few years, she just gets married and the story is over. How do we create an entrepreneur out of her? By giving capacity building, by tying up with financial institutions. Also, we are talking to the VCs and impact investors. How do we tap that talent and help build financial solutions? It need not be a phone pay. It could be building solutions for 1 million women in Chhattisgarh. It could be building solutions for women in Bihar or in Telangana in local language. That's the kind of thing that we are working on. Now, we have identified some winners and we are partner Bank of Baroda on this call, Mr. Chadha. Thanks to you, one of our partners who not just, we will do incubation at IIM Ahmedabad, but the difference was we also decided that we'll already sign up for scale-up partners. So post-incubation, startups struggle to go somewhere. Hence, the incubation part, the scale-up partners, Bank of Baroda, Federal Bank, Axis Bank, Swatantra Microfinance, and one more company. So that's what we did. Now, the larger mission beyond Sonari, how do we enable financial products available to women in India the way they want, how they want, when they want? How do we enable this is what we are working on. Honestly, we don't have the solutions, but I think this set of people I see on the screen have such in-depth knowledge which can help us drive our agenda further, and the agenda being no one left behind. I'll just give you two examples. Mr. Sinha mentioned about women-led farmers. So we have just launched a pilot, which was announced by the governor last week, Governor RBI, that we have managed to reduce friction to get a loan under Kisan Credit Card. So there is a press release by RBI, governor spoke about it. We are also going to work with dairy sector, especially largely women in Gujarat as well as Madhya Pradesh. We are already having discussion with banks as well as the dairy unions there to see how can we provide frictionless cattle loan to women dairy farmers, especially in these two states to make a beginning. Just an example, thanks to what Mr. Sinha said, dairy farmers, small and marginal farmers are key components, and we made a humble beginning. We'll look forward to partnering with all of you to take the agenda forward.
Great. That must be music to Jayshreeben's ears. That is awesome. Ma'am, you're on mute, ma'am. Yes. Yeah, so ma'am, you are the closest on the ground to the women. I think you worked with them the longest and you have the deepest insights. So, if you should be the one, telling us how we can just make this initiative a lot bigger.
Well, yes, whatever these innovations which we are talking about, definitely so far as dairy farmers is concerned, we have been working with so many women, and yes, access to finance is also available, but we can give more and more loans to these women. That's basically is this. The other products also, yes, that capacity building we have been doing, and we can do it more and more. And other solutions also, we will definitely talk with Swaraj, what you've been talking about. And entrepreneurship, I also agree with you that, if we want entrepreneurs to grow, then it cannot be that, 2 years you go somewhere else and all. So, but at least we don't have this kind of problems because, they have been coming even after, after 2 years also, they will come back and do it. But anyway, we'll work on it, and maybe if you need, we can talk together. I just want to talk about SEWA banks a little bit. So, do it in so many, minutes. So, but I was just saying that, SEWA Self-Employed Women's Association, as well as, women who are working in informal sector. And the bank, which was started in 1974, it was Bank of Women, for women, and by women. This is basically the idea, and this is what we have been doing. And it's based on trust and relationship. And I would say from 70s to 22, we are still doing this, and trust and relationship with working with these women. So this is something which I would definitely be very happy about this. The self-employed women, we call self-employed, maybe informal sector women, they are brave. We have always seen they are very brave, economically active, eager to learn. They are risk takers also, but they don't have much of the access to. I'm just talking about 70s, where they did not have access to credit, and that was the reason why they had to pay high rate of interest. that was basically the reason why we started a bank, and thankfully RBI also gave us this a cooperative bank. And the first stage was when we started with small saving and going 2 rupees, 5 rupees we were collecting from the field, and we were giving credit. First credits were always going to those women who had borrowed from moneylenders. So, that was the first thing which we did. But later on, of course, new women were also coming and we were giving them loans, small loans, but we were giving those small loans. So I would say that at that time in 70s, even the financial inclusion concept was not started. So, we were very happy that, we started from that, that time. Secondly, and then the second, I would say the first stage has gone, but second stage, what we saw was that, these women were growing, and they were doing their businesses, and businesses were also growing. But what we were seeing that, there was no insurance. So whenever it is, even the business was gone, ML was increasing, or there's some problem, it could be personal, or it could be, natural calamities, but, they had to, all the saving, whatever saving was there, it was going there. So we thought that, we should start with insurance. So the next product. It was very difficult, by the way. The thing was that, the first thing what the insurance people said was that women are not insurable. As earlier it was saying that bankers were also saying that, they are not bankable. So similarly, sorry about saying this. So, but then it was really very good. We did it. And it was also the housing repairing, because next time what they were saying is, we had more of them are also working in their home. So they were saying that, home-based workers, they were saying that we need better repairing and others. So we started with that. And we also started giving them business tools, because everybody was doing it manually. So that was the second stage where we started that, we would also give them tools. So basically, their assets can be increased, and then their productivity will increase. There were three things. Productivity was increasing. Second thing was their income was increasing. But the third thing, which was the best thing, was that, they were working so hard manually. So that had gone, they could do it through machines. So that was the thing. But when there's a third stage which came in, where, we realized that if we are starting to increasing different kind of products. First was, of course, as saving credit was okay, but then insurance was there. Some kind of a little bit of housing was also coming in. And then we thought that, we have to, because all these women, what they were doing was, even if, there were insurance, they were not using insurance. Even if we were seeing that, they had saving, but saving, they were doing some savings, but they would say it's for a rainy day, and a rainy day became so much, so that they were not doing it as a saving. So we realized that we should do something about it. So we thought that let us have a concept of life cycle needs. Pure life, how in the entire life, how many products you have within products also. And we did a breakup of this, that if it is a productive work which you need, then you should ask for credit. So credit for productive purposes.
Work. Yeah.
Great. Consumption is savings, because many of the women, where they were saying we have marriage in the family, and they wanted to ask for a loan. We said no, save for it. So plan for it. We were starting doing that. The third was emergency insurance. So if it is, whenever there's, even emergency, they would also, do the same thing, asking for credit. So this was something which we called them, and we asked, we had some kind of training on this. We kept on doing these trainings. But at the fourth stage, what we thought was, this is something, even if we have this concept, it's not used by all of them. Many of them were using it. So we thought there is a need for financial literacy, basically. And
Great.
That was the time, it was when we decided that, we should have a financial literacy. But before starting financial literacy, what we thought was that let us try to understand their financial behavior. Because what we were seeing was that in majority of the cases, we saw that women were earning a little bit more and they could save, but we saw that, they were not able to save much. So when we started, so we thought, let us do some kind of a financial behavior and then start financial literacy. The first thing which was there was that we saw that majority of them, that, daily eating and daily, so aaj kamaya, aaj khaya, that kind of thing, that they would not, they would not think that, okay, not thinking for tomorrow. We were just saying our first project was tomorrow, that, think about tomorrow. So planning, that was the first thing. The second thing was, because they were not planning, whenever they needed money, they were again going back to money lenders.
Yeah.
And that was really not helping them.
Yeah.
The third thing was that for any kind of need they have, they would always use it for credit, and they were not using. There was insurance, there was saving, there was eventually pension also came in, but then they were not using it. That was the thing, and they were using. They were doing only cash. They were using only cash and not thinking about any kind of finance. And how can you think about that? So this was basically the thing which we started, and I'll not go much in details, but the first thing, planning, this was something which it really worked. And with the concept, some concepts like I will say planning is also a concept, but concept of the concept of this the first thing that was that is that sorry, what's it? That they can get interest on interest on interest on interest. Yeah, that
compounding.
So, sorry, sir. But there's the third thing which was very important, which we also saw was that how can we help them to understand that that money is fungible, and for how fungible you can use. And budgeting and planning and all those things we've done.
I think you have laid the foundation by educating so many women, and so the work that you have done, and it would really help the bankers from here on. Thank you so much.
Power of compounding is the thing, that's what. And the last thing, pension, it was the second generation, it was not the first generation.
You have really drilled into them the importance of
that was, pension was also nobody, actually RBI did not allow us to do this because it's only for 10 years you can do it. So then we went to mutual fund, and then it came from
great idea.
And then and the last thing which I would say is, we're talking about entrepreneurship, Volleyball. So we have seen that all women wanted to grow. That's what we had seen, and what we were seeing that there was a stages. One stage was that when earlier they were just doing job work. Then when we gave them credit, they started making their own business. Then we saw that they were even started including their family members at their home, home-based workers and others. So then it's, of course, still the women was the leader. And lastly, which we are now seeing is that all these women have become, not all, I would say 40% of these women have become entrepreneurs, and they are employing other people also. Maybe for not full time, but part-time. But this is what we have seen. And sir, when you were saying about this, that whatever kind of digital applications and others we have from women, so we have seen that we went to all those women, those who were making this kind of applications, and we are using those applications because these women don't know how to do accounting, how to do planning. So those we have this kind of applications, all we are using it. We have to do it more and more about this, but this is something which we are doing at present.
Great. That is really terrific work from your part. So, we are a little short of time, but I would like to hear thoughts from all of you all quickly in just about a minute or so. One key idea, if you could just tell us on how, we could just take this to the next level. So, Mr. Chadha, if I could start with you just briefly in a minute or so, just one idea which you feel we must work on now.
So I think when we look at BCs, effectively speaking, it is assisted digital really, that you actually have a handheld device and you try to see how that can be used to doing banking transactions. But I think if you look at the medium term, the digital divide is getting bridged. So when we look at our own customer base, generally in BOB, we have been able to get something like 20 million customers on Bob World in a single year. Now, therefore, I think we need to see how do we actually prepare ourselves, where along with VCs, direct digital engagement is something that we can do. Today, the first variant of Bob World we launched was for our senior citizens. That is more friendly for senior citizens to use. I think we must again, over the next year or two, see how we can directly engage with our Women Jan Dhan customers on terms on which they are willing to engage to make sure that financial inclusion can become much more direct. Because one of the challenges when it comes to BCs is, and there's a gender bias which is there, if we leave the BC Sakhis alone, where of course 100% are women, but apart from that, general BCs, about 10% are women, 90% are still men. Now that introduces a little bit of, again, a challenge in terms of presupposing frequent interaction between the BC and the Jan Dhan account customer. So I think bridging that digital divide is something that we would want to work on to make sure that there is an alternative which is available to our Jan Dhan account customers in the privacy of their homes.
Yeah. Mr. Bansal, if you could just, in a minute or so, just, one area which you feel we should focus on in the next couple of years.
Thanks, Shobhana. I first fully endorse what Mr. Chadha has said, Now, in addition, I would like to say, I just reiterate the point as Jayshreeben has said, in a physical world, women entrepreneurs to build solutions for access, usage for women is one thing. If all of us combine our forces together, I think that will make a huge difference in access to women. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Jayshreeben, just one idea in just a minute or so, which is the area we should just, what is the first step from here now we must take?
I feel that there are so many young girls, who are daughters of women. And what we should do now is that we should focus on them. And, they would be more, because they are young, they are excited also. So all these things, it could be entrepreneurship, it could be digital things, all things, we should focus on that.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I'll give you the last word, Kalpana, because we've got the questions now.
Yeah, thank you. I completely agree with everyone else. I think it is about building the digital and financial capability. And here, I'm talking about the tools to build not just the knowledge, but equally the attitudes and skills of these women. I think, knowledge, of course, is features and how to use it. But I think the attitude, which is about, the building the trust in the system, having the confidence to be an agent, these are very important components as well.
Absolutely.
Along with, the technical competencies, I think all of these are important. If you have to build scale and do this, use the digital and financial literacy program in a manner that is right, I think we need to strengthen and focus on these areas along with consumer protection. I'm sorry, but I keep talking about it because we need more and more women entering the system. But if we do not have an enabling consumer protection
they will never adapt. Yeah, absolutely. They'll never switch. Absolutely. So for Mr. Chadha, we have the first question. Someone wants to know that while private sector banks use the BC channel for microcredit, the public sector banks, according to this person, don't do so, and how he wants to know how that can change.
So I think when we look at the kind of engagement which is there, it is a question of the breadth of the engagement and the depth of the engagement. I think from our viewpoint, we have a very, very broad engagement when it comes to customers, Jan Dhan customers. Today, BOB has something like 130 million customers overall. Out of the 130 million customers, about 70 million are financial inclusion customers. So that's more than 50% of our customer base, right? Now, this customer base is not a selective or a selected customer base. And therefore, again, while the engagement is there, it is selective engagement because not everybody is really up the curve in terms of engaging fully in terms of the digital economy, or again, the general economy is concerned. So I think the challenge for us is precisely to recognize, A, that a lot has happened from on account of the government initiatives in rural areas. I think Mr. Sinha talked in terms of the gas cylinder schemes, in terms of houses being built, and a variety of engagements. I think we have still not really come up to speed in terms of recognizing the potential that is created in terms of a much broader and a much deeper engagement with these customers. All of these Jan Dhan account customers that we have, now they actually again have assets, and they have entered in the economy in a significant manner. It is now for us to see how do we build the linkages there. Maybe the self-help groups can possibly be the most potent instrument there. Banks have traditionally, again, always been a bit wary in terms of credit to this segment, assuming, not necessarily knowing, assuming that there's a credit risk which is inherent. But as Mr. Sinha pointed out, and that is correct, that A, when it comes to SHGs, 99% of our customers are women. And there, in terms of standard assets, that's again 99%. So a lot of our traditional assumptions actually are not really grounded. Now the question is to recognize the changes that have happened over the last 5 and 7 years, and to see how our engagement can be much broader and much deeper.
Yeah. There's a question for Mr. Bansal. What do you think will be the key factor in fintechs becoming more gender intentional, especially for low income women or rural women?
So I would say it should not be more philanthropic or corporate social responsibility. If we have to kind of bring the opportunity that is untapped out there. So the example I give is there are 300 million women out there. If you look at $1,000 loan just for 300 million women, look at the opportunity which exists out there. So it's phenomenal.
Absolutely. And there's a question for Mr. Sinha. How can we get banks to issue microcredits to individuals outside of the SHG using schemes like the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, if that is possible outside of the SHG?
In fact, the banking BC Sakhis, as also the bank Sakhis, they don't limit themselves only to the SHG loan. The banks have been using them for financing for a lot of PMJDY accounts also and other programs. So in terms of the programs that they look at, it's a whole one. The other issue is that in widening that role, some of the constraints which we have, the most fundamental one was the mapping issue that I mentioned.
Yes.
Because ultimately, when a bank deals with an individual, the credit rating, the CIBIL rating score becomes very important. That's why I think once we build that up, our ability to borrow goes up. Considering that enterprise is the way forward, I'd agree with Rajesh. We don't need to do any charity here. We want to run it like a business. And I think this is where professionals in rural areas on a larger scale, it's not the rate of interest. It is just that ability to grow in size, because otherwise a lot of nano enterprises die as nano. And that's why the larger linkages with formal banking institutions becomes necessary.
Mr. Bansal, do you think that, in the near future, we could look at a gender disaggregated, data across, access, usage, some kind of index like your financial inclusion index? Do you think that would be helpful?
So that index is of RBI. I'm a subsidiary of RBI, just to give it clear. But I would love to work with World Women Banking and to actually develop an index which could help us understand gender disaggregated data better.
Okay, that would be really good. Do we have any more questions? 1 second. Yeah. So, for Kalpana, we've been hearing of the traction of BC Sakhi, one BC Sakhi for one Panchayat, the program. So, they want to know, how this can be made viable or sustainable, such that they could, compete with male agents in the area.
Yeah, like Mr. Sinha mentioned earlier as well, the BC Sakhis are given some form of assistance in the first few months, precisely for this reason. The government supports them in terms of just sustenance. It's not significant, but it's definitely from a sustenance point of view, gives them the opportunity to actually go out. I think that's the first step in terms of ensuring that we have more BCs entering the work stream. But once they enter, it is in actually what we have figured out is that to make them productive very, very quickly, we found the mentoring program actually to be the most useful of all. It's not just training, just holding out these Sakhis who have been there, who are doing well. If they can do it, you can do it. What is it that needs to be done? So we found mentoring to be actually very, very powerful to bring the women very quickly, in terms of their literacy and productivity. The third piece is of course sustaining that. I think this is where FSPs have to play a key role as well. Unlike the normal banking correspondents, which are owned by the CBCs, and therefore they have some way to look up and look at support. The BC Sakhis in the financial services space are a little lost. So in terms of actually support, they would require maybe our belief is that if there is a sustained handholding for another 12 months or so, for these women, some way in which we can adopt and train, and we're happy to partner. We've been partnering, so engage the relevant partners, but to have a sustained training program or a hand-holding, for a period of about 12 months, we believe could be useful to, to ensure that she just doesn't enter and get off once we remove the support, but she actually sees value in continuing in being a BC Sakhi.
Yeah, and she's able to carry on. Yeah, so I think we've had a really, really, quite a conversation, very interesting, very thought-provoking and full of learnings. And I'm sure the audience also has enjoyed it. Thank you so, so much for sparing the time to be here. All of you, Ms. Chadha, Mr. Bansal, Jayshreeben, and Mr. Sinha. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you also.
Thank you, ma'am.
Kalpana, over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks, everyone. On behalf of Women's World Banking, I truly, truly appreciate your valuable inputs, your time, your insights, in being here and, being an enabling voice in the women's financial inclusion and the financial empowerment space. You're all leaders in your space, and I'm sure the audience has gained a lot of insights from today's meeting. But at the end of the day, financial inclusion, as we know, is the first step towards financial empowerment, and that's our eventual goal. And here's hoping to have the next billion women to be completely financially empowered. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate each one for your time today.
Thank you.
Please watch out for it. It's going to land in your inbox, and this portal will also be active, so you're going to see it in the portal as well. There's a lot of there's like a wall in which you can comment on. There are selfie booths, so please enjoy yourself and make our day by showing that that you've enjoyed the session today. Thank you all of the participants for sparing the time this afternoon and being here, and we hope that you've all had a very meaningful afternoon and learned a lot about financial inclusion in India today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.